Policy Manager with Preschool Promise, and I'm really just here to welcome you because running the show tonight will be Cheryl Rose, who is the chair of our Finance and Audit Committee. Welcome. We are going to have a brief introduction from Cheryl, and then Hector, our Finance Manager, is back here on the computer. I don't think you have anything to clip, do you? Okay. We have a pretty small group tonight, so we do have the papers out for a formal public comments type of setup, but I think that we're small enough numbers that we can have just a more informal Q&A after Cheryl has wrapped up. And then of course, you all, I am fairly certain, know Sally Westheimer, but our wonderful interim executive director, Sally Westheimer, is here as well. So thank you all for being here, and I will kick off to Cheryl.
Great, thank you so much, and thanks to all of you for coming tonight. This is obviously a critical initiative in our community, and you know, I think about, I was telling this young woman here that I've been involved with this since our Leadership Cincinnati class did the project for Preschool Promise, and so I've been involved with this group for a very long time and incredibly passionate. My son actually is joining us tonight. Nick is a product of Quality Preschool, which I was a woman living in poverty at the time, so I was very blessed to have had that. So I have a really close tie, and he's just a great young man. So thanks for being here tonight, Nick. So we thought, you know, if you think about 2016, our community very generously passed to support expanding access to quality preschool. So tonight, the purpose of our evening is to focus on the $9 million that's budgeted towards expansion in community provider side of things. And what we'll do is we'll take you through a brief overview of how we have seen and thought about allocating the dollars towards our strategic objectives. And then we'll get into a little bit of detail, and then I think post that we'll get into any questions. I think the most important thing is the community initiative that really created this was all about collaboration. And so we really, truly value the feedback that we're going to hear tonight. So with that, let's take it to the first slide. And I'm the big picture person. These are detailed people. So the way, if you think about the work that we're doing, there are really three core buckets that are most important. And I'll start with the quality improvement aspect of this. We can't provide quality preschool if we don't have access to plenty of seats. And we don't have the number of seats we need. So quality improvement work needs to happen to help support community providers getting up to quality. Secondly is workforce development. And I put that second in this because if you think about the reality is we can't grow to quality without quality talent. So talent is important, and this is an evolving place for us, and I would suspect that that's going to be a big part of our dialogue tonight. So we're very interested in your thoughts on that. And then third, we get to the thing that we're trying to get to is tuition assistance to get these kids in seats. So this is a very scaled back kind of big number view of how we've allocated those dollars against the strategic objectives. So 1, 2, and 3, quality improvement, workforce, and tuition assistance. You can see quality improvement, and we'll get to a more detailed slide in a little bit that'll actually show you the increase in spending in each of these categories last year versus this year. But for this exercise, it's $1.4 million for quality improvement. We've allocated $569,000 to workforce development, and then tuition assistance, $4.4 million. And then we have something new in here because another learning that we've had, this is startup. None of us have really known how this is going to work. We've had unintended consequences. We're really trying to build the plane as we're flying it. So we, this year, are doing something a little different to allow us to be flexible and to meet the needs of the community providers and parents where we need to meet them at any given time. And that is creating a $500,000 contingency that we, throughout the year, can pull upon. So if we see a big increase or lots of great results from workforce development, we have the ability to tap it to increase that budget. Or if we have more kids signing up, we have the ability to use that contingency for that. So I think that's really a big cornerstone to our ability to really have an effective budget this year. And then I categorize pretty much everything else into bullet 5 here, which is program expenses. It's the outreach that has to happen. It's the marketing, the data, the evaluation, and M&A that has to happen to actually keep the program up and running. So that's a quick picture, big picture sum of total expenses. The next slide we get into, you'll see some data around each of these categories. So tuition assistance, in the upper left corner, you'll see that we are budgeting to support between 825 to 925 children in the upcoming year. So that's a 10 to 20% increase over the prior year. The lower left-hand chart shows quality improvement numbers, and that's where we are budgeting to support the creation of 230 new quality seats for this year. And those include family and child care providers, not just in centers. And then to the right, you'll see the workforce development. This is an area where we had very little spending over the past year. We've had some pilots, we're trying some different things, and are continuing to kind of tinker with this to make sure that we're getting support where it needs to be. So we are budgeting at this point to help about 240 lead preschool teachers through this program. The next slide shows some additional information. So again, this is kind of showing you the allocation of spending. So the top left is, again, tuition assistance, and it's showing you, what percentage of this is base enrollment, how much of this is new converted quality improvement seats, and then additional expansion from 2 to 250% of federal poverty level, and then 250 to 300%. The quality improvement pie chart at the bottom it shows how we're providing assistance in a range of ways related to step up to quality. And this is an important one because, I think if questions come up around this, we will definitely point this to Sally, because you think about it, every preschool provider is different criteria. Everyone's different. And so where they are on their journey towards quality is very unique. And I think what one of our learnings has been is we have to be able to be flexible enough to be able to be responsive and support where support is needed. And then finally, workforce development is the split between the teacher promise grants, teacher advancement bonuses, and wage grants for 0 to 2 stars, which is something we're working on, making some decisions around that program today. So the last slide we'll go over before we open it up for questions really gets into more of the meat of the budget and specifics around it. I won't get into detail around that. You have a copy of it in your packets because it's probably a little hard to read. But you will see the fiscal year, I'll just kind of tell you what the columns are. The fiscal year 19 forecast. The second column is the budget for fiscal year 20. And then the third column is the difference between 19 and 20 budget. So you can see increase in spending in all fronts in some pretty meaningful ways that we think will help us address our strategic goals. So anything else to add?
No, that's
okay. So that's kind of big picture, high level. So we'd love to hear from you on your reaction to this. What do you think we should be thinking about? What do you think we should consider to do differently than we have it today?
Sure.
Oh. I think he's saying ladies first.
On the contingency dollars that you guys have built into the budget, how exactly is that accessed? Is that board decision that drives the access to those funds? Is it the CEO? How are those contingency funds chosen to be used?
If there is a programmatic recommendation to expand in this area that's going to take a significant chunk, which is really what we expect when we think about it. It's going to be, we really need to invest more heavily here or here. It will go to the board for board approval. It won't be a fund to tap in for smaller things. It will be substantive, programmatic. Okay.
I think we still don't have a state budget, but it looks like there's significant increases in things like home visitation. And I'm not sure, because I know you sort of fed by the High More Education, LBJFS, there's different funding streams, but is there a way to are these increases and things that are sort of in direct to your mission that supported like the home visitation programs? Are there conversations happening or working a common purpose?
Absolutely, and we've been having a lot of conversation around advocacy specifically because we do know that there are we have a governor right now that is supporting some really important work. We also know that advocacy takes years, so we work in conjunction with United Way, and we really, I think, again, this is one that Sally can really speak to about how this really takes place. But as we design this program for tuition assistance, it's last dollar in, so we'll leverage all those other sources. So if kids are receiving more support from the state level, that means more funds for tuition assistance and our other needs. So we definitely want to see that happen. What would you like to add?
That's the right answer. One is that we're doing it advocacy in partnership with others. And that his point about us being last dollar in is critical. So we will use state and federal dollars before using the local dollars. And if we're lucky, I don't think it's a matter of luck. I mean, I think if the advocates are successful, I'll put it that way, it may mean down the road that we don't need this part of the levy, or that we can really direct it to other unmet needs.
And we had discussion at our last board meeting about the importance of even linking arms with other communities that have preschool programs, such as Dayton and Cleveland, to make sure that we're all aligning around this and can be as powerful a voice as possible. Yes?
I'm just curious, the UWGC, United Way Grace Cincinnati admin fees for fiscal year 20, it was 0 in 19 and it's 100,000 in 20, just curious about that.
Yeah, there's a pretty easy answer to that.
Yeah.
They do their budget on a calendar year. They haven't even started thinking about waiving the fee. So we put it in there for January to June of next year. We have every reason to believe that they will continue to waive it, but we couldn't make that assumption because they haven't made that decision.
And they waived it in years past.
They did. They charged it the first year, part of the first year, and then have waived it since.
Yeah.
So, just from a very general, someone who doesn't, you guys look at this all the time, but somebody who's just looking at it fresh. If I were to just have a simple question like, well, how many children are being served, right? So that would be this graph on the upper left, right? Which hovers around 900, you said? Or
Yes.
So is this projected enrollment, or, I'm sorry, maybe I'm not reading this.
The graph I showed you is projected enrollment.
It has both. It has the current year that just passed, is the blue line, I believe.
Okay.
And then above it, you have the low side and the high side of what enrollment we expect for the new year.
Great. And are we sort of in, are you where you want to be with enrollment? I mean, how would you respond to the public if they were to ask that question?
Yeah, that is a critical question, because during the levy campaign, lots of numbers were thrown out there and expectations around how many kids we would serve, which is more than all the number of children in Cincinnati is how many I think some people think that we're serving. But we are really trying to nail down exactly how many children in Cincinnati, particularly those under 200% of the federal poverty level, are receiving high-quality preschool somewhere, and then thinking about these levy dollars as filling the gap. And we have it's a very, what did somebody say to me yesterday? It's like nailing Jello to the wall, that expression, in terms of really pinning down the numbers, because it's such a decentralized system. But we hope within a fairly short period of time to say, who are we missing? Who's not getting any sort of high-quality preschool or financial support for that? I would say that we are pretty close, that we will have incremental increases over the next several years, but we're not off by 100%. It's not 2,000 children and we're hoping for 1,000. I think that with incremental increases, we will see the great majority of Cincinnati children in high-quality preschool. I want to add one other thing while I have the floor. We believe that the most important result of the Cincinnati Preschool Promise is increasing quality for all children, and that the financial assistance is there for those children who don't have access otherwise. But if if we have 10 children in a preschool who are receiving tuition assistance, and we've been working with that program to increase quality, there may be 80 preschoolers in that center who have benefited from the improved quality. So while I definitely want to make sure that we're not missing any kids who need tuition assistance, I also want to make sure that where those kids go, it's good for all the kids. So that's why we're investing so heavily in the quality improvement part of the work.
And I think trying to identify the quality deserts that exist in the city and making sure that the centers who are in those deserts have access and resources and support for going higher, getting up to a 3 or 4 or 5 star. You know, because there are children in those areas such as Mount Airy, on the west side of the city, that may not be getting those dollars that are needed because there are not enough quality seats in those particular areas.
I was around when the Cincinnati Union Cooperative Institute did a wage study, did a study around getting us up to the $15 an hour that was part of the original ballot language. And I was just curious, I know I see a line item for wage support for teachers, and you mentioned you're greatly increasing that from where it was last year. Is there any adoption of those recommendations in planning, or can you speak to that?
Yeah, so I'm sort of mixing some time frames in my mind. I have to sort of sort that out. When CUCI began the work, we were just befuddled about how to approach the wage issue. Everybody totally committed to it, but it appeared so complex we sort of couldn't figure out how to proceed. And so their work and involvement really did push us forward. And we quickly after that rolled out the teacher promise grants and achievement awards for those who advance in education. We now are working on the next phase, which is trying to plan a wage support program for those programs that are not yet at 3, 4, or 5 stars. We have 3 possible models that have been rolled out to some of our community constituency, and we have a committee of our board that works on these issues that is going to come and take a look at that and see if we can roll out the next phase. So we're actively working to try to get some good things off the ground and then try to assess whether they meet the goals.
So the wage support line item for fiscal year 20 is for workers in stars 1 through 3. Those are
there's a chart on page 4 that has a gray section and a blue section.
Oh, okay.
The blue is for 3, 4, and 5, and the gray is for 0, 1, and 2. It's all in one fund, so if we get more demand in one area than another, we would have some flexibility there. I believe that's it. Yeah.
Okay, so these are the projections for the fiscal year 20, what you plan to spend on qualifying teachers in those areas.
Yeah.
And it's a total of $560,000 for the year.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry I was late, but I had to work until 6:30, and I didn't expect that I'd miss the whole presentation. So you may have answered this already. I went online and I got the emails announcing this meeting about 10 days ago and tried to click to access the budget so that I'd be able to study it before I came to the meeting. the link that was at the bottom of the email did not work. It did not say Cincinnati preschoolpromise.org. So that's just a little bit of an excuse for why I'm catching up here. I emailed the source of the announcement 3 times and received no answer. So, I don't see where there's a number on the page, but this chart here that shows this enormous increase in projected, is that enrollment or centers?
Those are high-quality seats, the number of high-quality seats that are being converted through our quality improvement work.
So it's gone from 1 to 42 to 72, and in 1 year, you're projecting it's going to go to 234?
We expect that for the fiscal year, we are forecasting 234 quality seats to be added.
So that's a cumulative 42 in the first quarter. And yes, we have currently 111, I'm not sure, someplace between 110 and 115 programs. I say it's different because I think this week we heard of 3 programs that got highly rated, so they're moving up. We have over 100 programs currently getting coaching, materials, training, and support to improve the quality, and we really, I think that's a low estimate. I think that the rate at which they're getting rated is at a pretty good clip right now. So I hope it's higher than that. I do think that we'll meet that.
There was a slowdown simply because up in Dayton, where all of the licensing specialists are officed at, that storm went through. And it closed down everything up in Dayton. So there is a backlog of specialists trying to get out to the various centers. So that has affected that as well.
I introduced Terry England, who is one of our board members and a longtime owner of a very high-quality preschool in Evanston, one of the great programs in our community. So I appreciate your role here and much closer to the action and can explain things. Yes.
So there's a distinction made for the workforce development budget, the 0 to 2 stars, and the 3, 4, and 5 stars. Is there a similar distinction made for how the quality improvement dollars are going to be spent?
The quality of improvement dollars are exclusively for the 0, 1, and 2 stars. When they reach 3 stars, now serving children and getting tuition assistance. So that work is to get them up to 3, 4, and 5 stars.
Thank you.
It would be very helpful, I think, for us to hear as you kind of look at how we've allocated funds, any thoughts or reactions that you might have to that, or things that we should be considering.
So, my name is Carolyn Brinkman, and I'm with the Children's Home of Cincinnati, and we're fortunate to provide high-quality preschool, so we are a recipient of CPP dollars. So a couple of comments. One is, first off, it has made a huge difference in our program. So we probably have 75% of our children are coming through CPP dollars, and probably the 30% of those kids are 100%. So we have quite a few families that did not qualify for child care vouchers, who are living below 200% of poverty, who without CPP dollars would not be in high-quality preschool. So I want to start off with saying it has made a big difference in our program. We've also been able to really bring in some additional professional development opportunities and some additional supports. We have quite a few children with high social emotional needs, and because of the CPP dollars, we've been able to really work on making sure we have structures and systems and staff well-trained who can meet the needs of those children, and we can maintain them in high-quality preschool. So first off, I want to say that positive. The next thing I would just really encourage, and I sit at the board meetings, this is really hard for me, I know that summertime support, it's not in the master agreement with Cincinnati Public Schools, but, you know, for us, every year, we are having to raise dollars from somebody else to help cover the tuition assistance for our families. As I said, 75% of my families are working families. They are working poor. They live below 200% of poverty. They cannot afford $210 a month over the summer to keep their child in a preschool program. And for some of our kiddos, when you talk about summer slide, the loss of their academic achievement, let alone my kids with high social emotional needs who would lose all that support that they're receiving, the nurturing and the attachment and all those things that are so critical to development of early children, for young children and their readiness for kindergarten. I have to advocate for it. It's just, especially for those families on 100% CPP. The voucher families, I can figure out something to do. I can accommodate those families, so those families that are already receiving child care vouchers, if I can't access CPP dollars for 3 months, I can maintain that. But these families that rely on it at 100%, I just have to advocate that. Continue to think, and I know it's not in the master agreement, I know that's a piece of it, but for those children and those families, there really is no option. And we're left holding the bag and trying to figure out what to do to support those families. So, thank you. Just have to advocate for that.
I think one thing that we are looking at is more additional fundraising that would go toward that summer gap that we have, because that has been a bane for all of us. And I agree with you, Carolyn, that is something that we really are trying to work on, not only, not me as far as being on the board as a board member, but also being as a community provider. Trying to make sure that those children don't have that break in services. And so I think that we are doing some additional fundraising to get to that point.
These are community providers, though, right?
Yes.
So I'm with the Southwest Ohio Association of Education and Children. So we have a real mix in our membership with about 1,000 members. The community providers don't over the summer.
Correct.
So I'm trying to figure out why the funds stop. It's an innocent question. I mean, it's probably a Pollyannish question. But
No, not at all. I mean, I think we all had this great aspiration of what we would have loved to have had out of the gate, and that was one of the negotiation points with CPS when we came together, and it's what we could get done at the time. I do think, again, we're learning as we're doing this, and we're seeing the impact. Because if you think about these community providers, are businesses. They're small businesses that need support. And so, Terry, I don't know what it does to you when you give support for that summer. The business is stressed, the kids are stressed. So I think there are a lot of reasons why we would love to really focus on that. And I think it's something that we need to open up discussion for with levy renewal. And I think in the meantime, we're finding other dollars to bridge that gap is really.
But I'm literally not understanding, they're not under CPS contract with community providers.
Right.
So why does it apply?
Yeah, so it's and I'd love to have a conversation with you and talk a little bit more in detail.
Sure, yeah.
So this is CPS school levy dollars, and CPS felt very strongly that they operate school year programs. That's what preschool looks like to them. So for the extent to which we use preschool promise levy dollars or issue $44, from what we've been told, neither of us were in the negotiations between the preschool promise and CPS, but they felt very strongly that any dollars from this levy should mirror the school year. So children get support for 9 months from these levy dollars, many of whom are also children of working families and receiving other funding supports. Ours are the last dollar in many of the cases. It just pays for a portion, but that portion gets cut off the last day of school. And we have heard since the beginning what a challenge and pressure this provides. I don't mean to get too I don't think it's philosophical, but in the concept here, but The commitment, we believe, was to use our child care community early childhood infrastructure to expand the availability of high-quality preschool. And so we have child care needs for working families, and we have early education embedded within them. And to many of us in this room or who have worked on these issues for a long, long time, it's one and the same. The idea that the high-quality early learning stops in June and starts up again the end of August does not make sense. For now, for these first 5 years of this levy, this is the way it has been structured. This kind of input, I believe, will lead to really good discussions going forward.
I just want to mention that United Way also made commitments of fundraising that I don't think have been met, because I don't see it on the income line items anywhere. So that's been an unmet, commitment. I also just, you asked for reflection, so, just again, looking at this for the first time without really much time looking at it, just the fact that we have such a lot of money in administration and not so much in wages, and it's the wages of teachers that makes the high quality possible. So, just a reflection, I'll just say my name is Michelle Dillingham. I'm with the Cincinnati Educational Justice Coalition. I'll say in transparency that we've been very critical of Preschool Promise from the beginning, for the point of it appeared to create a duplicative sort of parallel quasi-privatized funding source, where many of us felt that some of these problems could have been solved without the creation of a whole other layer of administration. So that said, again, to only have $569,000 to bring up really teachers who are making minimum wage, early childhood educators, whatever you want to call them. We can't get those higher stars without people with credentials, is my understanding. And you can't get people with credentials unless you support them and you get them good wages. And yet we're spending a quarter of the entire budget for the year on administrative costs. So it's just a reflection. Of course, I don't have the advantage of knowing all the detail behind the numbers. It's just a observation.
And I'll share some additional information with you on that, because I think, I kind of grouped the program expenses together, and we've actually had some discussion about how should that reflect, because a lot of what the Preschool Promise staff is doing is actually programmatic. So it really is programmatic work that's happening. The marketing, the outreach, which we have lumped in here, is part of that program. If we can't reach and get kids that, give the attention to do the community outreach, we're not going to get them in seats. So I do think we're going to better reflect that, because I think, Michelle, to your point, we want to make sure we understand what is considered really overhead work versus the actual programmatic work that's happening and boots on the ground.
Right, I would just say I'm actually a huge fan of publicly funded preschool, right? But there are many people out there who are not. And so I'm being critical only to really be helpful to your critics who will just see this as a waste of taxpayer dollars. So any way that you can just hear what I'm saying and better reflect the work, it'll only help the cause, because if I just look, what I've heard so far is, well, we can't really tell you numbers because it's hard to nail down to a wall, and this budget doesn't fully really capture what we're really doing because it's very programmatic. I'm just saying, use this as an opportunity to maybe improve the pitch, because ultimately this will have to be voted on again. And finally, I would say about bringing up people to a higher wage. That was a huge selling point to voters when they voted for this. And all they can see is that you did a study, you didn't take any of the recommendations, for the most part, and you're doing the best you can, but it's too complex to pay people a living wage.
That's not what we said. We took the report and have implemented some significant programs and are implementing more.
Okay, but people are still not being paid what it said in the ballot language. Is all I'm saying, is that what I voted on has not happened yet. And that's a legitimate criticism that you guys will have to answer to when you ask for more money. Because that was a driving reason that a lot of people voted for it. But again, I'm not trying to be.
Well, I think it's important, and I think to your point, really reflecting the results that we're seeing. And I think that I don't have the data ready, but the good news is, here's the good news. What we're seeing happening is that once providers get to quality and they start getting more kids and more tuition, that now that any business can support a living wage of $15 an hour. So I think there's kind of a, we're working towards that, and that's where I think we're going from, putting a much bigger program in play here. We need to evaluate it over the course of this year to see what's working, what are any unintended consequences. And then, but I think the best news that I'm seeing is I think it's like 80-some% of these providers are paying the $15 wage because they can afford it. So I think it's a really neat story that we're, but yes, we need to invest in it.
I know Crane just put out, and I just got it today, I don't know if you got it, Carolyn, about the questionnaire about how much we pay, what is the criteria, what are the benefits that we kind of plug into the pay along with that top part, because we don't want to create this cliff effect where the employees who are getting services themselves through the county automatically lose everything that they've been working on. We want it to be a gradual effect. So I pay $15 an hour. But I came from a 2-star to a 5-star, which allowed me to be able to pay that. Okay, and we are working very hard on the Workforce Development Committee to get that up and use this $569,400, make it go up to $1 million. That's my goal. That's my goal. And using those contingency dollars there.
Michelle, thanks for your comments.
Yeah.
So I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Kathleen Bryan, and I actually am here wearing 3 different hats. One hat is I'm a faculty member at University of Cincinnati. I'm a board member on UC Early Learning Center, which is a 5-star center and has CPP slots. And I'm also a member of the Workforce Development Council. So I actually have thoughts coming from each of those different hats that I wear. So one of the unintended consequences of this wage issue I see from people going back to college to get their associate degree is they're saying, even if they have an interest in working with infants and toddlers, they are saying that wage support, that $15 an hour is not including someone that wants to be an infant teacher or a toddler teacher, even if they have an associate degree or a bachelor's degree. And a lot of centers are feeling this pressure where they have, a classroom teacher that's in a preschool room, and I understand the preschool promise dollars are meant for preschool, but that's one of those unintended consequences that it's really putting some climate culture issues at centers, because you've got infant toddler teachers that won't be able to be eligible for that. But a lot of directors are figuring it out and trying to make it equitable across the board. So it is happening, but it is complicated. Something when we're talking about the school year issue that just came to light as a board member of UC Early Learning Center, I was not aware that there's no flexibility in the vacation time that, and somebody please correct me if I'm wrong about this, but that students that are, or children that are in community-based preschools must take CPS's spring break as their vacation week. So there's no flexibility as far as, that's not true? Okay. All right, I will go back, because I was wondering, I was like, that doesn't seem that would make any sense at all.
No, they still receive the same care and the same dollars during the time that CPS is.
But what if they wanted to take their vacation in December?
Yeah, no
They would
problem.
get paid, the center would get paid?
The center would get paid.
Okay, they were not under the impression that they did.
Oh, no.
Okay,
No. We just don't get paid in the summer.
I understand.
That's the only thing.
But you can claim their days as you need to take those days.
Exactly.
You don't have to take those days out.
Okay, I'll clarify that. And then really kind of the thing that I'm here for, Workforce Development Council, but also just curious, I would like to know a little bit more about the evaluation. You mentioned the Crane reports. I was like, oh, is there something new that came out? But, I mean, what do we know is working at this point? Have we seen a report? Is there something that has been published that we can say, okay, here's a reflection on the last 2 years? Just to, you know, I know we paid a lot of money for the evaluation support, so just curious to see where that's at.
We have a board meeting next week, and our board meetings are all public and recorded. And Crane is coming to that meeting to present the report. So I've seen a copy, but I can't, off the top of my head, quote any specific statistics. They're not sticking in my head. The results are very positive with teachers, directors, and a number of the things that they took a look at. So they also, though, have identified areas for improvement, so we're very pleased about that. We currently have a request for proposals for third-year evaluation out to the community, and it's announcements are posted on our website, and we tried to distribute it to anybody we thought might be interested or anybody who applied before. So we may have a same evaluator, we may have a new evaluator for the coming year.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Other thoughts or questions?
Is there a formal board response to the CDCI report? I didn't check out the notes, actually.
I don't think that there was a formal response.
So you implemented some of the things I suggested, and
You know, I think we took that report and it informed a lot of the decisions that we did make and the highlights that we're doing. You know, we're trying to make this work, and this is complicated and unintended consequences. How do we balance that and get something meaningful? I'm happy to see such a budget this year towards it. I mean, we've had to get there, and I mean, I think we all feel the urgency. I mean, this is an important piece to the puzzle for so many reasons, and we have to figure it out. And I'm just encouraged about what we're seeing when the program actually is up and running and what happens.
how many do they think it would take to get to 15 an hour electric? Isn't it 30 something to a million?
I couldn't hear the question that Dan's going.
Do you know what they said it would take? I mean, what are we talking about here? 15 million a year or something it is?
What the cost to get $50 an hour?
Yeah.
The cost of the whole system to get up to $15 an hour.
They had some different numbers and different kind of projections in that, and it ranged the gamut. And I don't know if you remember off the top of your head.
I'm comfortable with that.
I don't remember either, but I mean, it was like double what was being spent.
The
So I'm just
entire
wondering-
proposal.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's sort of hard to reconcile, when you have, how are you gonna do that if the money is just, in other words, I guess I'm asking for the next month go around, is there a chance you'll ask for more money?
Oh, I think this would increase. Anticipate this will increase. As a matter of fact, I think that it's very possible that if we see this working and we see take-up rate of teachers requesting grants and going there, that I think we may look at that contingency.
Are you asking whether the levy will be renewed for a larger amount?
Double.
Double.
I see.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
universe of the possible is kind of constrained by, I don't know what
No,
exactly.
right.
It's whatever the business community decides that they're gonna ask for. That's an exaggeration
The
perhaps.
school
but-
board, I would say the school board, because it was a $48 million levy, of which $9 million is going to the community side of preschool. $8 million we're budgeting, we're reaching for 9 this coming year, so it's 9 out of 48 million. And the school board will decide, and we will try to influence them every way we can. When I say we, I mean the community.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, the community.
Are you aware that there's a poll going on right now with the question, you know, how do you feel about the preschool promise? There's polling being done.
Yeah, no, do you know who's conducting
I
it?
do not know. I just
Okay.
had a couple people tell me they received a call
Wow.
within the last 2 days, and preschool promise was part of the poll. It might be good for you to get that data. if you
Yeah.
can.
Oh, yeah, that'd be great.
Find out how people, what are people thinking.
Within the current budget, you said about 80% of centers are paying $50 an hour. Was that correct?
Yes, we, of the 3, 4, and 5-star programs, this was done at a point in time, and it looked at those 3, 4, and 5-star programs that had been receiving tuition assistance or children with tuition assistance for 1 year. In other words, not like the minute they become 3 stars, but once they had a chance to serve kids and get income, that's where that number came from. So if you're in the program, you're getting kids with tuition assistance, it allows for the economics of paying a fair wage. Well, not a fair wage, $15 an hour. Yeah.
I'm sorry, my talk about
Okay.
Is there any data on the number of teachers at these centers whose own children benefit from the subsidies? Which I think would be a good thing.
That would be a really interesting data point, you know?
I remember on my
I'm not
board
sure how we
chair.
do that, but we might be able to. It's interesting.
But I remember calling my board chair to be breaking down in tears unexpectedly. She started talking about teachers at centers whose children couldn't. She couldn't have her own kids who attend these centers, but that certainly would be a quality of life enhancement if it's building that capacity.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we're working with 4Cs on getting additional information about where the centers are, where the children are, where they're coming from, and who is receiving the CPP funds along with the county funds. So I think they have more information on the county funds than they have the CPP funds. So I think that is going to be something that's coming down the pike in the next few months because 4Cs is going to provide that information.
Oh, that's great.
Are undocumented kids eligible for aid?
Yes.
Are they getting,
Yes.
is there a lot of Latino kids and kids in the system in there?
We don't know their citizenship status. We do know the number of non-English speaking kids. And I brought that report. I think about 10% of the children are Spanish speaking.
And that was a question that Crane put out in the survey that I received today. Yeah, and they also had a question about how many Spanish-speaking, French-speaking, African-speaking employees, teachers that were on staff too. So they wanted to know that as well. And I thought that was really great.
Mark, do you know any more? Are you looking at it? She's looked at different.
English is the primary language, 88% of our students. Non-English of our students speak Spanish as a first language. And then there's the rest are distributed between other and French.
Other thoughts, questions, or things to contribute?
I think one thing, there were barriers to the children who were non-speaking or non-documented children that were existing that we kind of helped break those barriers down because we were asking for birth certificates and, documentation that they didn't have, So now we're just kind of looking at taking the doctor's physicals, if it has their birth date on it, a crib card, things like that that would help break down those barriers. Also helping the centers with insurance. CPP has come up with a plan to help them with that insurance because in order to be a partner with CPP, you have to have liability insurance. Now, as centers, we have that, but maybe you're a home provider and you may not have that. And so we're looking at $100,000 of coverage, liability coverage. That's kind of hard for a family provider to come up with. So CPP has come up with a solution for that and help them pay for that. So that's another.
Yay!
You know.
I was just thinking about just one other piece on the budget end. I know when we were first rolling out CPP and talking about it being the last dollar in concept, there was a lot of anxiety and fear that families would not keep their vouchers from it, that families have to reapply annually to get their vouchers to keep them instated, and then if they didn't do that, then they would just fall onto the CPP dollars as 100% CPP. Is that anything that anybody's looking at this point around the success rate that we've had? Because to me, that's going to keep more children in seats. If we're really able to do the last dollar in concept, I was just wondering if we're collecting any data around what that's looking like at this point. Because I know that was a high place of anxiety.
I was a board member until a few months ago.
Right.
So as a board member, I have never heard that is a problem. And working inside, I have never heard that come up as a problem. So I definitely will look into it more and ask some questions. It certainly has not turned into a significant problem. There may be some stories, some anecdotes, but not a driver.
Yeah, and I know as a provider, it's my job to do my best to keep my families moving in that direction, and I certainly do my best, and we have families that fall off for different reasons. So I was just curious.
So a little explanation of see if I have this right. So the publicly funded childcare is the Cincinnati Preschool Promise pays for families at a higher level than the publicly funded childcare. So if somebody's income has gone up and they just slightly and they fail to renew, suddenly they're available 100% of their funding from the Preschool Promise instead of should have been allowed to be last dollar in, and therefore the money spreads further. Really do not think that's turned into a problem.
Great. Glad to hear it.
Anything else? Thank you so much for bringing your thoughts and most importantly your passion. I know all of you are working in some sphere around this and we can't do it without you. So thanks again for your time tonight. And if you would like to get some more detail or I can be happy to do a quick